You never sleep, witch.
I'm going to the God's Wood.
Daemon Targaryen's character arc throughout Season 2 of House of the Dragon was an unexpected journey into the psyche of a man who presents himself as a fierce warrior on the outside, but internally has vulnerabilities stemming from his early childhood that have shaped him into a rather narcissistic and egomaniacal prince with a battle-hardened dragon at his command. However, it was a much-needed exploration of Daemon for both the audience and himself in order for Daemon to reassess his priorities going into this war. Daemon refused to even hear Rhaenyra out on what Viserys had believed from his dreams and portents, telling her that it is dragons which made them kings, not prophecy. But throughout Season 2, we learn more and more that so much of the entire Targaryen dynasty is built upon prophecies and stories. It is at the core of who they are, and their destinies are tied to it. Daemon is not a spiritual man, despite the fact that he is literally obsessed with his magical Valyrian ancestry, and he rides a dragon, Caraxes. Daemon has spent years studying the sparse histories of old Valyria, which survived the Doom, and is even rumored to have flown to the smoking ruins of Valyria with his wife, Laena, and her dragon, Vhagar. The Valyrians believe the dragons are gods, and the Targaryens are closer to gods than normal men, so the idea that Daemon is not a spiritual man is rather ironic. So, Daemon needed to experience something greater than himself in order to see that there are powers in this world that are older and stronger, with roots that run deeper than Daemon, or the Valyrians, or anything he thinks he knows. Daemon needed to be shooketh. After once again overplaying his hand in the blood and cheese incident, Daemon and Rhaenyra have a showdown where she must finally question if he can accept her as his queen and ruler, but Daemon cannot answer. He leaves her behind to prove himself by claiming Harrenhal in her name, alone with only his dragon. Harrenhal is the most important strategic location in Westeros, centrally located in the Riverlands next to the God's Eye Lake and right along the King's Road north of the capital. It is a gateway to the Riverlands and the key to holding the territory, with a castle large enough to host a garrison inside its massive walls. Both Daemon and Aemond know its importance in the war, and each have a different plan on how to claim the castle. Daemon travels alone with his dragon, with speed as his advantage, but he has no host to hold the castle until he can muster the River Lords and convince them to fight for their side. Daemon believes he can command these men's loyalties, but the Rivermen are not cut from the same cloth of what he is accustomed to. Daemon arrives at Harrenhal to no welcoming spectacle. He's left to stumble through the rain and dark stony ruins until he finds where the castellan and his small host were eating dinner. Daemon arrogantly announced that he was claiming Harrenhal, and, with no protest, Sir Simon Strong bent the knee to the king consort. However, in the background, a mysterious woman stood proud as her uncle made his vows to Queen Rhaenyra, first of her name. Though offered bread and salt, and even venison, Daemon refused to eat out of concern he would be poisoned. He was given a spacious chamber, very likely even Lord Larys' own rooms, which were leaky and dark. Weirwood roots force themselves through the cracks in the foundation, and the bed Daemon sleeps in is made from the wood of a heart tree as well. From the first night at Harrenhal, Daemon experienced a series of dreams which invaded his psyche in ways he was not prepared for, and propelled him to question every major decision he has made, which led him to transform into the isolated and severe man he has become. Alice Rivers is a woods witch who lives at Harrenhal, and the supposed illegitimate sister of Harwin and Larys Strong, though there is speculation on her true age. Alice gave Daemon a tea of weirwood leaves, microdosing him in preparation of his weirwood dream if he were able to withstand the effects. The tea brought on visions and dreams of his worst innermost thoughts and desires, revisiting points in his life which fundamentally changed him as a person. Alice was his dream doula, for all intents and purposes, his hostess and caretaker during his Weirwood dream retreat. We can imagine this to be something similar to perhaps an ayahuasca retreat, where the goal is to enter an enhanced state in order to achieve greater knowledge, heal aspects of the self or others, and to purge negative energies from the body for religious and spiritual purposes. It seems worthwhile to explore each of Daemon's dreams and what they represent, all of which ultimately led him to a point where Alice felt he was ready to see what the Weirwood had to offer, showing Daemon his true destiny. It was not an easy journey, and we as viewers certainly learned more about Daemon than maybe we signed up for, but it was one hell of a trip. So let's get into it. In this vision, Daemon sees young Rhaenyra sitting before a fire, humming softly as she sews up Prince Jaehaerys' cut throat. Rhaenyra turns to Daemon, saying that he's always coming and going, and she must be the one to clean up after him. This represents the messes that Daemon created intentionally in order to make Rhaenyra's life more difficult. Daemon resented Rhaenyra for stealing what he felt was his own birthright, and he did make choices to challenge her, or simply make it known that he was angry. It's gone on for years, up to and including ordering blood and cheese to go after a son for a son. But we'll get into more of that later. Daemon sees footsteps beneath the doorway, and it gets his spidey senses tingling. He grabs his sword and follows, finding who appears to be Daemon Targaryen stalking through the dark passageways of the castle. Daemon follows him, even chasing him down, only for Daemon to turn around, and it's Daemon himself, wearing an eye patch. This represents the violent impression that Daemon leaves, whether on his family or the other lords and lowborn. Daemon was accused of being Maegor come again by Otto Hightower, and has spent his lifetime living down that rumor. Though Daemon spent very little time with Daemon Targaryen, even their brief encounters had a lasting effect on the prince, and their parallels to one another are undeniable. But is that the legacy that Daemon wants to leave upon his family? And what does that truly say about him as a man? Does he wish to leave a violent legacy or something greater? Daemon dreamt of a young Rhaenyra on the Iron Throne, speaking in High Valyrian. Her words sounded as if they were from a distant dream, and Daemon struggled to make out what she said. She told him, "It's been said that Targaryens are closer to gods than to men. In my eyes, you were a god, Daemon Targaryen, the prince of the city, the lord of Flea Bottom. I was an innocent. You exploited me and abandoned me. You sullied my name at court. You empowered my rivals. You tried to make my ruin. You put me on that throne, and you love me and you hate me for it. You created me, Daemon, yet you are set on destroying me, all because your brother loved me more than he did you. This is what you always wanted, is it not?" Daemon picked up his sword, Dark Sister, and cut Rhaenyra's head from her shoulders, but she continued to speak to him. We talked about this scene in a live stream and its connection to St. Winifred in a similar scene from the movie The Green Knight, and considering how things went during the Red Sowing, you know I believe this was foreshadowing to Rhaenyra ascending to sainthood. However, for Daemon, it's almost a rejection of her righteousness, her sacred duty to ascend the Iron Throne. She tells Daemon he created her. His own failures led to his dismissal as heir, and now he is set on destroying her. He wants to corrupt her in the way that he failed himself. This was part of his decision to take her to the brothel back in episode 104. If she were sullied, then they were equal. But even he knew that was wrong and walked away before it went too far. Laena appears to Daemon twice, in what is still unclear as if it were a dream or a hallucination. She appears as a serving woman and asks him if he has checked in on their girls. Laena's appearances were very simple, but I believe she appeared twice because they have 2 daughters. They were reminders to Daemon of a responsibility he cannot escape, and if he abandons Rhaenyra in order to pursue a claim for himself, he would also be abandoning his daughters, who remain with Rhaenyra and would stay loyal to her. So, Laena came to him as a reminder of what he could lose if he pursued his selfish ambitions. And this is even a callback to her own father, Corlys Velaryon, who struggles with the very same problem throughout Season 2. Is it truly worth it? Daemon had a dream about a very Targaryen-looking woman who fawned over him, who told him he was a perfect prince, a strong warrior, and bore the right constitution to wear the crown. How much better Daemon is than his brother, Viserys. The two were getting physical with one another, Daemon even taking a trip downtown to worship the holy place he came from. And then it is revealed that this is his mother, Alyssa Targaryen, who had died when Daemon was just a small child. Now, this dream was a doozy. Daemon never had the chance to know his mother, as Alice later points out, because she died in childbirth when Daemon was just 3 years old. So these memories of the things Alyssa was saying to him were nothing more than fantasies, and really speak to the vulnerabilities and fears of a young boy who lost his mother. We don't know much about their childhood, but it is well known that their father, Balon, loved their mother very much, and so her death must have been very difficult for him. We saw how Viserys dealt with things after Aemma's death. He was secluded and turned away from those close to him. So, perhaps it was similar to how Balon the Brave dealt with his own children after the death of his wife, because clearly that left an impression on both of his sons. We'll get into more of that later. Daemon craved the love of a mother that he never had, and the women in his life never offered him the devotion that Daemon felt his mother would have given him. He believed his mother would have doted upon him above all. But those are just the unrealistic fears and hopes of a sad little boy who lost his mother far too soon. This is like a very core wounding, and Daemon was shaped around this vulnerability. It's something very difficult to move past and requires a great deal of unlearning. And hopefully the Weirwood tea is doing its part to heal those synapses in his brain. Daemon has 3 consecutive visions of his brother Viserys, and it's clear that this is the point the dream sequences have been leading towards. Daemon is in the throne room, and he sees Viserys on the Iron Throne. He's repeating what he said to Daemon the day he dismissed him from court for making the heir for a day comment. Daemon is horror-struck, and this day clearly torments and haunts him. Daemon tries to escape the throne room, but the doors are barred. He screams, "Open the door," over and over again. Now, it's pretty clear that this incident was traumatizing for both Daemon and Viserys. They are both wounded on this day because in a terrible moment such as this, they should have leaned upon one another and not allowed themselves to be divided. What I believe is really crucial here is Daemon screaming, "Open the door." It is reminiscent of when Hodor had to hold the door while Bran and Mira escaped from the White Walkers. Hodor's entire arc led to this point, and he saved Bran's life by simply holding the door. Bran was green dreaming when they were attacked, and without Mira and Hodor, he wouldn't have survived. Hold the door is synonymous with the door to your mind, the doors of perception, and Daemon is preparing himself to connect with the Weirwood net as well. So Daemon's psyche is screaming at him to open the door to his mind, his third eye, and open himself to the omens and power of the magic around him. Daemon finds his brother mourning over the body of his late wife, Aemma. Viserys is alone, and this must be the day that Daemon is at the brothel, drinking and naming his nephew the heir for a day. Daemon realizes that he should have been with his brother rather than with his lickspittles, and he goes to Viserys and holds him in his arms as his brother weeps for his dead wife. He realizes how much pain and division could have been prevented if he had simply been there for his brother to begin with. In Daemon's final dream, he has become accustomed to the strange visions coming and going. Daemon finds his brother Viserys in his chambers after he has beheaded Sir Willem Blackwood. Daemon, at this point, just walks right up to his brother and says, "What is this?" And Viserys explains that he had never wanted the crown, and it does not bring the happiness and power one might think, but Daemon's always wanted it. He offered it to him, asking his younger brother if he still wants it. This is Daemon's One Ring moment. Viserys reminds him of all the pain it causes, and he is corrupted and decomposing, a visual representation of what power does to a man. Daemon witnessed what that power did to his brother, even when Viserys was a steadfast man who tried to resist its seduction. The goal of Daemon's dream sequence was to force him to address his inner woundings and to relent in his self-centeredness. When he arrives at Harrenhal, he was a closed fist, and now, after hard work rebuilding the massive castle in which his ancestors were responsible for its destruction, he has become an open hand. Interestingly, the leaves of a weirwood tree have 5 points and are said to resemble a hand. And in episode 8, we finally see a green man, who are the horned guardians of the Isle of Faces, whose sigil is also a green hand. So, the 5 points of a green hand are connected to the 5 points of a leaf on a weirwood tree, and are also connected to the 5 knightly virtues: friendship, generosity, chastity, courtesy, and piety. As Daemon worked to rebuild Harrenhal, his hands were blistered and bloodied from his labor. Alis healed the wounds on his palms with her tinctures, reminding him of how the war would affect the small folk, and how it's a pity he never knew his mother. She is quite aware of the content of his dreams, but her words mean something more, and it's connected to why she is crying in the final episode, as she wakes Daemon for his weirwood dream. But we'll get into more of that later. Alis takes Daemon to the Godswood, where she tells him that there are omens to be found there for those willing to look. When Daemon first arrived at Harrenhal, he would have laughed at the ideas of omens' importance, but now he's no longer inclined to. Daemon is a man obsessed with the past, with his ancestry and history, but he's now ready to look into the future. Daemon places his hand upon the bleeding weirwood tree and receives a vision of the major points in Targaryen history to come. He sees Brynden Rivers, also known as Bloodraven, seated upon a weirwood throne in a cave, the roots running far and deep. From the wine-colored birthmark on his face flies a 3-eyed raven. He sees the coming of the White Walkers and an army of dead in the dark winter, followed by a dead dragon on a smoking field, as Daemon walks over the dead bodies and through puddles of blood. He falls into one of the puddles, dragging him down to the watery depths. A red comet appears, followed by 3 dragon eggs in the flames, and then the princess that was promised, Daenerys Targaryen, first of her name, with 3 dragon hatchlings. Then Daemon is back in the throne room, where in the darkness Rhaenyra slowly comes into focus, crowned and seated upon the Iron Throne. From behind him, Helaena tells him that it is a story, that they each have their part to play. Daemon knows his part and what he must do. One of the major themes throughout Season 2 for many characters is the reincarnation cycle: life, death, and rebirth. It's something I've discussed in many videos throughout this season, and is a definitive presence in the Harrenhal storyline, especially connected to the Green Men and the Isle of Faces. The appearance of a green man solidifies, in my opinion, the idea that the Isle is a place of reincarnation. The color green is connected to the reincarnation cycle, and the antlers the Green Men wear are symbols of regeneration. Daemon experiences a rebirth through the process of his dreams, re-examining his purpose and his loyalties, and going through an ego death of his own and rebirth in Rhaenyra's light. When we consider the saintly persona she has identified with over the final episodes of Season 2, Daemon simultaneously recognizes her sovereignty and divinity, and proclaims his devotion to her in life and death. The wounds Daemon bore upon his palms connect him to Christ-like symbolism, where, after his death on the cross, he was reborn after 3 days.
Do nothing now. In 3 days' time, the winds will shift.
Alice represents a sort of Mary figure when she cleans the wounds on Daemon's palms, and when she weeps as she leads him to the tree for his final vision. She weeps because she knows she will lose him after this. She has fulfilled her own part in showing him his destiny, but she also knows that his destiny will include his death, and now he knows it as well. So, taking him to the Weirwood tree is a sort of crucifixion, in a sense. However, the Weirwoods offer everlasting life. The children believe the trees are gods, and when they die, they become part of that godhood, with their life and knowledge entering the Weirwood and its interconnecting roots. And we must ask ourselves, is Daemon a living sacrifice to the trees? Or was there another? And that is why the tree bleeds as Daemon stands before it. The first men practiced blood sacrifice to the old gods through the Weirwoods, so is Alice still keeping with the old traditions? Perhaps it was the remains of Willem Blackwood which seeped through the Weirwood, a sacrifice Daemon unwittingly made himself to the tree, which opened the door for him to access sacred knowledge in an enhanced mental state. In episode 6, Alice spoke of hearing cries of anguish on the wind from Brackenlands, Stonehenge, Lambswold, and Moray. These are all towns in the Riverlands, which we have learned from the Rivermen themselves keep the old ways. Alice hears voices on the wind, the cries of the innocent, and, interestingly, very near to those lands is the hollow hill where the ghost of High Heart resides. The ghost of High Heart is presumably a child of the forest who appears in the histories of King Aegon V and the tragedy at Summerhall, but Arya also encounters the ancient woman during her own time in the Riverlands after escaping Harrenhal. During Aegon V's reign, she came to court with Jenny of Oldstones and foretold that the prince that was promised would come from the line of Aerys and Rhaella, Aegon's grandchildren. When Arya encounters her along with the Brotherhood without banners, she speaks in riddles in exchange for songs, and gives news of the realm to Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr, a Red Priest. When she meets Arya, she begins to weep, and as she weeps, rain begins to fall through the night, which might just prove she is a child of the forest, as they were said to command and control the elements through earth magic. The dwarf woman studied her with dim red eyes. "I see you," she whispered. "I see you, wolf child, blood child. I thought it was the Lord who smelled of death." She began to sob, her little body shaking. "You are cruel to come to my hill, cruel. I gorged on grief at Summerhall, and I need none of yours. Begone from here, dark heart. Begone!" Because of her connection to the Weirwood trees, her ability to hear the cries and anguish of the people of the land in that region, and her sovereign authority over those around her, Alice proves to be someone of great importance. And she weeps while she sends Daemon to his true destiny, the first of many Targaryens she will witness fall in the coming days and years and potentially centuries. I believe that Alice is the ghost of High Heart, and she has the ability to foresee what is to come for the dragons and House Targaryen. She also has her own part to play in the story. She is a piece on the board, just as Daemon is. Daemon had to be broken down in such a way because his ego was pervasive to his loyalties. He was either going to be the next Targaryen tyrant who burned down Harrenhal in his quest for power, after both Aegon the Conqueror and Maegor the Cruel had done the same, but his desire to recreate the 3 heads of the dragon was overcome by his innate loyalty to his brother and his stated heir, if not from a real desire to actually be good. Daemon spent his life dodging accusations of being the next Maegor Targaryen, rumors mainly created by Otto Hightower. But in truth, Daemon is not the tyrant they make him out to be. And in episode 8, we finally see why he needed a true ego death in order to redefine his loyalties going into the war. But those are just my thoughts, so let me know yours in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Daemon Targaryen asking for help?
Counsel.